Hi, my name is Tiana Karamayas and I'm a Cavoodle puppy coach and breeder for Noodle Way and River City Puppies. As a coach, my philosophy is simple. A Cavoodle should always complement your lifestyle, not complicate it. And this is the foundation to everything I teach. For almost the past decade, I have been working in the breeding, training, grooming, and veterinary sectors of the small animal industry. I've also been raising Cavoodles for the past 16 years, so I have definitely learned a thing or two about the breed along the way. Now this podcast is all about Cavoodles. Raising Cavoodles, training Cavoodles, grooming Cavoodles, breeding Cavoodles, and how to shape the behavior of a Cavoodle puppy. So if you're a Cavoodle parent or you are looking at adding a Cavoodle to your family soon, then this podcast is for you. New episodes will be released each Tuesday morning, and you can follow me across all social media under the name @OodleWay for more tips and advice on Cavoodles. Thanks for tuning in. Hello and welcome back to the Cavoodle Coach podcast. My name is Tiana Karamayas and I'm your host and your Cavoodle puppy coach, and I am really excited for today's episode on the podcast, mainly because it's also for a bit of selfish reasons that I'm asking this, or that we're talking about this topic. And the reason is I seem to be on a bit of a habit where every single year, come the new year, I always start thinking about getting another puppy, and I do it every year. I obviously love Cavoodles and I love training puppies, and I was just joking around about getting a new puppy the other day, and I was like, hang on, this is a really great topic to talk about on the podcast because there's a lot of thought that has to go into whether or not to get a puppy, and I thought I would share my 2 cents on what questions you should be asking yourself before you commit to getting a Cavoodle. So I've come up with about 7 separate questions to ask yourself. Hopefully, if you're listening to this, it helps you get closer to your decision, whether it's a big yes, let's get the puppy, or perhaps we need to wait a little bit longer. But either way, I think these are some good questions that you might not have thought about in as much detail as I'm going to talk about them. So let's just dive in and let's just get started. And maybe by the end of the episode, I'll be able to figure out whether or not I'm going to get a new puppy. I don't think it'll be quite yet, but it's always on my mind. Anyway, let's just get started. The very first question we need to ask ourselves to know if we are ready for a Cavoodle puppy is obviously financially. Can we afford another puppy or a first puppy? And I want to talk about some of the costs involved with having a Cavoodle. The very first cost we obviously have when getting a puppy is the cost of purchasing the puppy, adopting the puppy. Now, in Australia, the cost of Cavoodles do vary. We can definitely find Cavoodles for $1,500, but then we can find Cavoodles for $6,000. And that is a really big difference between the lower end Cavoodles and the higher end Cavoodles. And I really encourage you to really look into the why behind why some Cavoodles are $6,000 and some are only $1,500. If you want my opinion is typically, and I won't speak for all breeders because we always have to do research into every breeder we look at, but typically the Cavoodles that are more expensive are usually more expensive because they are having more work done with them by the breeder, in terms of more work in making sure they are very healthy, so more genetic testing and health testing on the parents, making sure that the parents are in optimal health before breeding, and those costs come into how much you then price your puppies for. Another one is also how much time is spent raising the puppies. So does the breeder work a full-time job and just has the puppies in a pen all day? Or is the breeder's full-time job raising the puppies, and therefore are they doing a lot of early development work on the Cavoodle puppy that is going to pay off in the future in terms of your puppy's temperament? Because what a breeder does with a puppy does determine their temperament as an adult dog. So it is really, really influential, and the breeders who spend all of their days with their puppies purposely doing different activities with them, that can really pay off in the long run, and it is absolutely in your best interest to pay for the more expensive puppy now to have the better temperamented dog when they're older. So they can do a lot of exercises early on and activities with the puppies to really create the best temperamented dog. We can also look into things like training. So what sort of training does the breeders do with the puppies? For example, when I was breeding Cavoodles, I'm no longer breeding Cavoodles, I'm just coaching families on how to train their puppies when they bring them home. But when I was breeding Cavoodles, some of the things I used to be able to achieve was a fully crate trained puppy. The puppies were all toilet trained to my house and my backyard, which meant when they go to your house, if you follow my toilet training steps, you really never have any accidents in the house, and the puppies have really amazing bladder control, which creates a lot of flexibility in the family and takes a lot of pressure off you when introducing your puppy to the new family. My puppies also knew all of their obedience training. So their name, sit, down, stay, leave it, swap, loose lead walking, place training. They had learned all of this with me by the time they went home. They also had no separation anxiety. So they were practicing being left on their own without their siblings from a young age with me, which means when they went to their families, the families never had any problem with crying or separation anxiety with their puppies, and also social anxiety. The puppies, every single day, once they got to an appropriate age with me, we would go out twice a day for socialization in different environments. And so that meant the puppies were very comfortable around people and other animals and trucks and birds and all the different things in the world, and they never had any anxiety or reactivity to it. So they were really well socialized. And I was able to achieve all of this with my puppies because it was my full-time job. And of course that means my puppies were then obviously on the higher end in terms of how much they cost. But it is well worth it from a family's perspective to invest in a better quality Cavoodle puppy, because it really, like I said, it really impacts the temperament of your puppy and also how easily they transition into your home and how much training you then have to do with them. It's a lot easier if the breeder does most of the work for you. So financially, how much a Cavoodle costs comes into play. I definitely would look away from the cheapest Cavoodles, and I would definitely look into the most expensive Cavoodles and figure out why are they the most expensive Cavoodles, and is the work the breeder's doing worthy of the increase in price, and then finding a breeder where you can confidently say, yes, I am very comfortable paying this increased price in puppies because I know I will get a better quality, better temperamented Cavoodle long term. So we have that initial financial investment of buying the puppy, but that is just the puppy. We then have everything else we have to buy for the puppy. Things like playpens and crates and toilet areas and lullabies and grooming supplies, shampoo, conditioner, brushes, clippers, toys, enrichment toys, leads, harnesses, treats, dog food. All of this stuff is another really big investment when we get a puppy. And it's really important that before we get a puppy, we actually break down all of these different items that we need, and we actually get a cost for every single item so that we know that we can actually afford all of this for our puppy. The good thing is a lot of those costs, those upfront costs, tend to last a while. So we don't need to buy a new lead every single month. We don't have to buy a new dog bed every single month. So those are the things we can buy it once, and it lasts us, sometimes years, which is really good. But then we do have the costs that are more repetitive. So costs that come up every single month from our puppy. And some of these costs are things like your pet insurance, things like your dog food, your parasite control, your vet visits, so your vaccinations, any sort of consultations you have. These are very repetitive costs that come up every single month. And it's really important that on a monthly basis, we will be able to afford this puppy. Now, these Cavoodles, if we're lucky, they can live a really long time. My oldest Cavoodle, he passed away last year, but he was 17 when he passed away. So it's also a very long financial commitment. So we have to look and project it into the future. And we have to ask ourselves, can we afford this puppy right now, in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, keeping in mind that obviously every cost we have for the puppy will increase with inflation. So your insurance is going to go up, your dog food will go up, your parasite control, your vet visits, all of this will increase over the next 15 years. So just making sure that you have that flexibility within your family budget to know we will be able to maintain the upkeep costs of having this puppy. Another really big cost that comes into getting a puppy is obviously the training that we do with the puppy. Training is another one of those things where sometimes the best thing you can do is pay more for better training now, because it's going to give you a better quality dog and a better behaved dog in the future. There are a lot of different training options out there for puppies. We've got our general puppy school, which can be taught by someone in a pet shop. It can be taught by someone at a vet, or it can be taught by a trainer who does training for a living. And the cost of the different training that puppy school offers will differ depending on where you're getting puppy school from, and it usually correlates with the qualification and experience of the trainer. But then we also have training that is more specific to different breeds of dogs, such as my Cavoodle Training Academy. And it is a specialized program made just for Cavoodles, but it also gives you so much more than just your basic obedience training that you receive by going through puppy school. So puppy school will teach you things like sit, down, stay, recall, leave it, those obedience exercises. But it doesn't go into anything that is breed specific. So things and behavioral issues specific to the dog. For example, with Cavoodles, they are very prone to anxiety, social anxiety, separation anxiety, novelty anxiety, noise and sound anxiety, startle anxiety, so much anxiety. They are prone to it all. And there is a lot of training we can do when they are very young that helps build up their confidence and teaches them how to regulate their emotions so they don't suffer that anxiety as a puppy or an adult Cavoodle. But this sort of training isn't offered in a generalized puppy school that will be cheaper in cost. So that's when we have to really weigh up what training goals do we have for our puppy, and can we afford the upfront investment of different training programs and which one's going to suit us best. Again, keeping in mind that the training we do with our puppies at this young age is going to determine how they behave ongoing. And if you have a Cavoodle who has anxiety, this costs you a lot in the future, because anxiety leads to things like reactivity, which then requires a behavioral trainer to fix. And reactivity is when a dog completely loses their mind and barks and can even be aggressive when they see people or other dogs. So that can be really restrictive on the family. If your dog suffers separation anxiety and it gets really severe, sometimes you have to then go down the route of actually getting some anxiety medication for our puppies. And that's an ongoing cost, and it also becomes very expensive. So really important to keep in mind that if we're not doing the right kind of training when our puppies are young, it could actually cause us a lot of financial stress and hardship later on down the track, because the puppy hasn't learnt how to adequately manage their emotions and feel comfortable and safe in our world. So the type of training we do is really important. There's a really big variance in cost in training, and that's why, again, it's really important to do your research and weigh up, is this training program worth the money? Or should I find one that is better quality, more specific to my breed, that's going to give me better results? And another really good aspect of my Cavoodle Training Academy is you also get support. And this is something that we don't get with your general puppy school. If you were doing your general puppy school, usually it's 4 weekly classes. So 1 class a week for 4 weeks. They usually go for an hour. In that hour, the puppies will go through some obedience training, sit down, stay, recall, that sort of stuff. Then there'll be a play session at the end, and then you say goodbye and you don't get to speak to a trainer for another week. The issue with this is we're not getting any breed-specific guidance. We don't get to ask a trainer about how the puppy is transitioning into the home, any behavioral issues you're struggling with, like crying or barking or jumping or biting. This sort of support isn't given, because the only support you get is that 1 hour of training a week. And in that 1 hour training session, because it's a class of sometimes 10 dogs, the trainer does not have time to speak for 20 minutes to each family to give them personalized advice. It's just, let's get in, we'll teach your puppy how to sit, and then you go home. And of course, knowing how to sit, lie down, and stay doesn't actually teach your puppy how to manage their emotions and behave in the home. So with that general puppy school, we really miss out on a lot of the support that families really need when they're first getting a puppy. Whereas in my Cavoodle Training Academy, You have all of the training videos that you can do at your own pace. It's self-paced. You can rewatch them as much as you like. But then we also get weekly Q&A sessions where every week we jump onto a live Q&A and you can ask me any question you have. And I stay on that Q&A until every single family is feeling confident and has no more questions. And that kind of support is something we don't get in puppy school, but it was really important for me to add it into my program because without it, families really struggle. And I don't want you struggling. I don't want you feeling overwhelmed. I don't want you feeling stressed. I want you to have guidance and support when you're raising a puppy because it's a really big and very, very important process, and I don't want you to feel alone. So my Cavoodle Training Academy, we have that Q&A support, and I always am making new videos to put inside the program that answer all of the most common questions I get so that you're never left wondering what to do when the puppy is biting your toes, the puppy is barking at you, the puppy can't fall asleep, the puppy cries when you leave the room. You're never left wondering what to do, and you're never left scrambling on Google trying to find an answer, and then every single video you watch has conflicting advice. Instead, it's hundreds of Cavoodles and it's specific to the breed. So the support that you get in training is also really important to look into, and just when you're making your decision on what program to join, just ask yourself, am I getting any support with actually managing my puppy's behavior, or is it just obedience training? If it's just obedience training, are we going to run into some trouble? The answer is yes. And what will you do when you run into that trouble? Who can you ask that question to? And that's where sometimes it's more important and more beneficial to invest in a more expensive training program, but one that actually includes all of that support. One extra feature of my Cavoodle Training Academy that it has that puppy school doesn't have is you actually get all of the grooming guidance and tutorials as well. So it's learning how to properly bath, blow dry, brush, and groom your Cavoodle from home. And because our Cavoodles have hair, it means their hair grows and grows and grows, and it needs to be maintained and trimmed. And if you don't know how to do this from home, you will have to go to the groomer every month for a wash, blow dry, and a little tidy up trim. That's upwards of $80 a month. And then their full groom, where we actually groom their entire coats, that's upwards of $100 every 8 weeks. And so it's a really expensive ongoing cost, and that's why when I was creating my Cavoodle Training Academy, I really wanted to give you the skills to be able to do all of this from home if you want, or at least some of it at home, to really save you from those really expensive grooming visits that creep up on you really quickly, and we have to do them. We can't not groom our Cavoodles because their hair will grow extremely long otherwise and get very matted. So that's another aspect of my Cavoodle Training Academy that is not offered in puppy school, but it is offered in my program. And of course, my program is more expensive, but if you learn how to groom from home, you then save yourself literally thousands of dollars across your dog's lifetime in grooming visits. So it's another good skill to learn. So that financial commitment, whether you're ready for that, is a really good question to ask yourself before you get a Cavoodle. And if you would like me to go into more detail on how much things actually cost for a Cavoodle, so if you want me to actually break down how much pet insurance is, food is, parasite control, beds, collars, leads, training, all of this, if you would like me to go into detail and break it down for you, I can definitely create another episode. Just send me an email, let me know you want it. My email is hello@oodleway.co, and I can record an episode really breaking down all of the costs with actual numbers on how much it costs to have a Cavoodle and how much it costs month to month to own them. Okay, on to the next question that we need to be asking our Cavoodles. We're not asking our Cavoodles, asking ourselves before we get a Cavoodle. We have to ask ourselves, what is our schedule? What is our work schedule? Is it a schedule that actually is suited to a Cavoodle? Because every single dog breed is going to need different levels of interaction, attention, and company from a human. And it changes breed to breed. Cavoodles, they are a dog who are very much human focused. They are raised as a companion breed. And it means that for our Cavoodle, their whole world revolves around us. And so they do need us around a lot of the time. Not all the time though, because if we're around all the time, they get separation anxiety, but around a lot of the time. And so with a work schedule, if you're working full-time hours and you're out of the house every single day, 5 days a week, and your puppy will have to be left at home every day for 5 days a week, this is not an ideal situation for having a cavoodle. And if you have a cavoodle and you're never home, that cavoodle will have anxiety. That cavoodle will also really suffer mentally. They'll have a lot of boredom. And whenever a cavoodle has anxiety or boredom or frustration or stress, what dogs do to manage these emotions, because they get a really big adrenaline rush when they feel these emotions. So when they have those emotions and they get those adrenaline rushes, naturally a dog is going to start barking and crying and digging and chewing and destroying things and weeing through the house when they are feeling stressed, anxious, or bored. And so if you're working out of the house 5 days a week and you're never home, you're going to struggle with a lot of behavioral issues with your cavoodle. And not only that, it's not fair to the dog. A dog should never be feeling so distressed. They need to be enriched adequately depending on their breed, and they need to be happy and loved, and they need to be fulfilled. And so if you don't have that flexibility in your schedule, it's a really good idea to maybe just wait until you do have a bit more flexibility, just so that your cavoodle isn't home alone all the time. Typically, if you have to be out of the house a couple days a week, this is manageable, but definitely not 5 days a week. We definitely need to be home more for our cavoodles to involve them in our life. If, on the other hand, you can take your cavoodle with you to work, this obviously is a way to get around this issue. Or if you have family, friends who can babysit throughout the week, that also can help. We definitely don't want them all alone every single day, 5 days a week. It's not going to end well. It's a recipe for disaster, and it is not fair on the cavoodle. The next thing we have to look at is the travel plans we have in place. This question here is another really big one that I find tends to get overlooked. We forget that there's going to be a time in our life when we want to travel. We don't just want to be home every single day for 15 years. We're going to want to leave the house. We're going to go on holidays. We're going to go away for weekends. And we have to ask ourselves, when we plan to go away, what's happening to the dog? Because again, cavoodles don't cope well going into a kennel. That's not a good option for cavoodles. Cavoodles need safety, security, familiarity, and comfort, and attention from humans. And so if we are getting a cavoodle, it's really good to either have family or friends already lined up who would be happy to look after your cavoodle if you go away. And if not family or friends, finding a dog sitter who can come and stay at your house is another good option, one that you trust and one that your puppy can get very familiar with. Not one where it changes every single time, but when it's the same person who can come back and look after your dog. Making sure we have this in place for travel is really important, because if you don't have this in place and you get a puppy and then suddenly you want to go away but you can't, this is when dogs become really restricting. And that when we are getting dogs, it's never because we want to be restricted. We want them to complement our lives, add to our lives, bring joy, love, and happiness. We don't want them to stop us from living our life. So we need to make sure that if we are going to travel, we need to have people already available who would be happy to look after our dogs. And it's also a really good idea to have a few different options, because sometimes we go away on holidays and our family comes along too. So if your family comes along and we're all on holidays, who else do we have to look after the dog? Making sure we have that in place is going to be helpful. And just in general, I will say, definitely avoid traveling for the first 6 months to a year of having a dog. A weekend away is okay, but try to avoid going away for, a month or so, because puppies really need a routine, familiarity, comfort, security, and we need to not change their environment up too often. So if you can, get a puppy when you don't have any travel plans in the next 6 to 12 months. That's going to be the best thing for your puppy, especially a cavoodle who, again, can be very prone to anxiety. The next question we have to ask ourselves is the age of family members. This is an important question. And when I talk about the age of family members, I'm really talking about the age of any children in the house. It is not impossible to have very young children and a puppy, but it does make your job significantly harder. If you have children under the age of 5, it's really hard to have a puppy and be training a puppy at the same time, because it's so hard for the children to follow the training boundaries and routines that you have in place. And if not everyone in the family is following the same training routine, and if everyone in the family is doing different things with the puppy and not responding to the puppy in the same way, as in if the puppy cries, if not everyone is doing the same thing in response. This creates a lot of miscommunication between the family members and the puppy. And when a puppy is being miscommunicated to, they feel confused, they feel frustrated, they feel annoyed. And when you have children around, and especially if those children then invade the puppy's space and the puppy doesn't want that, it can then lead to a lot of aggression, growling and barking. But also, if they're confused, the puppy is going to chew a lot more and dig and wee in the house because they are so confused, and that's how their body works through those adrenaline rushes from intense emotions. So just looking at the age of the family members is really important. The older the children are, the easier your job will be to train the puppy. I know it's a really beautiful thing to think about having a puppy and young children and them growing up together, but it's not always the best option for the puppy, and we always have to look at what's best for the puppy when we get them. So usually I say children under 5, it'll be really tough. Usually children 8 years and older can have a better job at actually respecting the different training boundaries and methods that we're using, and we'll get better success in training. Children in high school, even better. The other thing to keep in mind is puppies know who the children are, and the puppies always misbehave the most around children. And the way that puppies misbehave around children, it's not because they're purposely misbehaving, but it's because they treat the children in the family like they treat their siblings. And when a puppy is with their siblings, they bite each other, they jump on each other, they pull each other's tails, they growl, they bark, they wrestle. It's very intense. And so when we have children in the family, the puppy does try and act this way with the children. And if your children squeal, scream, or get really upset over being bitten, the worst part is your children are upset, but usually that squealing, that jumping around, that running away from the puppy actually reinforces the behavior for the puppy, and the puppy does it even more. So really important to ask yourself, how old are the family members? Is this the best time to get a puppy, or should we wait until the children are a little bit older? I always say wait till they're older because it is a lot easier for everyone involved. Okay, what number are we up to? 1, 2, 3. We're up to the 5th. Is it the 5th or the 6th question? I'm not even sure. The next question we want to ask about our puppies is the commitment, and whether we are prepared for the commitment of a puppy. Now, puppies are a lot of work. Puppies are a really big time commitment. Those first few months with a puppy, all of your spare time needs to be poured into helping guide and shape your puppy's behavior. Because if we're not guiding and shaping them, the puppy is going to be left to their own devices, and a poor puppy doesn't know any better, and they will chew things, and they don't know not to chew the couch, and they don't know not to wee in the house, and they don't know not to bark when they want something. So if we're not there and we don't have that time commitment available to help guide and shape our puppies, we're going to really struggle again with a lot of behavioral issues. And when I talk about being ready for that time commitment, what I mean by that is asking yourself if you're really ready to not be able to relax on the couch after work. Because if we have a puppy, that doesn't happen. We have things to do with the puppy. It's also asking yourself on the weekends, we won't have as much flexibility to go out all weekend. We need to be home for the puppy because the puppy can't be left alone for 12 hours in the day. So it's just making sure that we are prepared for that time commitment, and to know that that time commitment lasts for many, many months. And it's tough. Having a puppy is very tough. Everyone ends up missing life before the puppy because we had so much more freedom before the puppy. Of course, it definitely pays off. There is nothing better than having a Cavoodle. It is the biggest gift and blessing in your life to have a Cavoodle. They are beautiful. They bring the family so much love, but it doesn't mean that puppy stage isn't a big commitment. And when we have a puppy, we are going through that puppy stage, we have 2 options for that puppy stage. One option is we have a puppy who we call naughty because they bark and they cry and they dig and they chew and they wee everywhere and they ignore you and they race around with all this energy and they jump and they pull on your clothes and they destroy things, and we just think it's the worst period and our puppy is really misbehaving. That's one option for the puppy stage. The other option is we have a puppy who sits when they want attention, a puppy who is toilet trained to grass, a puppy who sleeps for 12 hours at night in the crate, a puppy who chews on their toys and doesn't chew your fingers, a puppy who is happy when they're left alone for a few hours and they don't get stressed or anxious, a puppy who plays fetch without jumping on you, a puppy who responds to all your obedience cues straight away, and a puppy who is really calm and relaxed in the home. Those are our two options for a puppy. Both options require a big time commitment. We can't have the really well-behaved, emotionally stable Cavoodle and if we don't put in the time to get that. That Cavoodle takes a lot of guidance, a lot of behavior shaping sessions, and we have to be there a lot of the time to help guide them into these behaviors. Of course, it means we have a beautifully well-behaved puppy and it's the best, but it still requires a time commitment. The other puppy who is really naughty, really struggling, and you just think is the worst puppy in the world, that also requires a time commitment, because what's happening is we're not training the puppy in the right way. We are not doing the right activities with the puppy, and now they're being naughty. And then training feels twice as hard, and we're constantly telling the puppy no, and we're pulling them away from things, and we can't leave the house because then they destroy things. And so that's also a time commitment. But it's about choosing which time commitment we want and knowing that either option is going to require time, and the well-behaved dog requires a lot more time. It's always worth it in the end, of course, because we want to have a really happy, calm, relaxed dog who feels really content and actually knows how to regulate those emotions without feeling stressed all day. But again, really big time commitment. So just making sure that when we are thinking about getting a puppy, we know that if we want a puppy, there's a time commitment, it's a sacrifice involved. We won't have as much freedom in our life at first because we're going to have to pour all our free time into the puppy, but it is well worth it on the other side when we do it correctly. And that's when it gives you the most amazing Cavoodle in the entire world. So are you ready for that commitment? That's a really good question to ask yourself, and be ready for it for quite a few months. Usually we start to see the puppies really start to settle into a good routine at 9 months after they've gone through their hormonal changes as they turn into a teenager, which happens at 6 months. So we've got time up our sleeve where we really need to be dedicating a lot of time to our puppies. And just asking if you're ready for that is a really good question. Now, I think I've gone through most of my questions. I believe, I'm just looking at my list here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe we are up to the 7th and the final question that I have that I really recommend you ask yourself before you get a Cavoodle puppy. And this question is, have we done the research yet? Are we actually ready to say yes and put the deposit down on a puppy? This is a really big one. There is a lot involved with raising a puppy. You've probably got an idea of it throughout this episode. We have the financial side, we have the time commitment side, we have deciding on the right time for the family depending on the age of the children and the family members. The training is obviously the biggest part though. Puppies need a lot of training. It takes a while and there's so much involved, and it's not as simple as teaching them how to sit, lie down and stay. Earlier, I was obviously talking about the difference between puppy school, a very general class like puppy school, versus training programs that are very specific to the breed you are getting. And this is where the research comes into place, because I'm going to talk about my Cavoodle Training Academy, and I'm going to talk about what's involved in this program, because it is not a quick program to get through. It is not one that just requires 4 hours of training lessons and you're done. That is definitely not the program. And the reason why it's not the program is because you can't possibly learn how to understand the behavior of a Cavoodle and communicate with a dog in 4 hours. It takes a lot longer than that. They are a different species after all, and they do not speak English. So with my Cavoodle Training Academy, the very first part of the program is an entire module dedicated to preparing for a Cavoodle puppy. So learning about how the breed acts, what they need, how they think, how they learn, how their emotions work, how we can help manage their emotions, how we can build their confidence, how they suffer anxiety and how we can prevent it, how we can actually toilet train them really quickly and crate train them really quickly. That first initial module is really in depth, and there are a lot of video modules in there to work through. And this takes time. Typically, I always suggest to families, we want to be going through that a month before we get a puppy, because there is so much learning involved about a puppy. We have to learn about the body language signals a puppy uses. So when a puppy widens its eyes and it looks at you with these really big eyes, what's the puppy saying to us? How do we respond to that? When the puppy flicks its ear, how do we respond to that? When the puppy lowers its tail to the ground, how do we respond to that? What's the puppy trying to say? These things take time. We have to learn a whole new language of communication with dogs. And so when we are asking if we're ready to get a Cavoodle, if we're getting a puppy and we want to get a Cavoodle, it's okay, have we done the research first? Have we started learning? Do we know everything about the Cavoodle before we get the puppy home? Because if we get the puppy home and then we try and learn, it's so much harder. I almost said it's impossible. It's not impossible. It's definitely not impossible, but it is so much harder because we're trying to manage and respond to a puppy's behavior at the same time as learning what the behavior is and what the best way to respond is. And you're butting heads. It's not working out. It's much better if we learn about it first, have a good understanding of what to expect from a Cavoodle and their behavior, and then when we bring the puppy home, we can get started straight away on the right foot and help shape and guide their emotions and their behavior in the right way from the beginning without doing the wrong thing. There's also so much more in place for getting a Cavoodle. It's understanding, how do we actually train them? What's involved in training a dog? How do we use hand signals and marker signals and treats to train our dog? How do we get a Cavoodle who is very fussy and usually very low motivation towards food? How do we get them engaged in a training session? How do we get them excited to follow our direction and respond to us? Also, questions like, which pet insurance should we have in place? That has to be in place before we bring our puppy home to get the most out of the insurance. Things like, how do we choose a vet? How do we choose a grooming salon? When do the puppies need to go to the vet? What parasite control do they go on? What food do we buy? What enrichment toys do we buy? What's the best bed? What's the best crate? What's the best harness? So many things to learn, and it's all best to learn before we get the puppy. So inside my Cavoodle Training Academy program, when you enroll in the program, you actually get access to the entire program for 1 whole year, because with having a Cavoodle, it's a big process, and I actually love families to join 1 month, 2 months before they even get their puppy, so they can work through that first module, which is where we get ready and we get prepared for the Cavoodle. And then once you actually bring your Cavoodle home, that's when we go into 4 weeks of training. And the way the program is delivered is actually through daily routines and schedules that I give you. So 28 days, the first 28 days with your puppy, you get schedules, and each day it lists the activities to do, how long it takes. There's videos for each activity, and we just follow it every single day for 28 days. And when we do that and we follow it for 28 days, we know that our puppy has been properly socialized, their confidence has been built, they're toilet trained, they're crate trained, they never have separation anxiety, they're not reactive to dogs or people, they're calm and relaxed in the presence of dogs and people, they know how to walk on the loose lead, they know all of their obedience training, and they don't suffer any anxiety for any objects or sounds. They're comfortable with grooming, you've learnt all the skills, and we have raised our puppy to the best of our ability in the first month, and then we get to just repeat over the next 9 months of the year that we have left of the program access. And that's how my program is delivered. It is all self-paced. You do it in your own time, but each week for the first 4 weeks of having a puppy, you do get to jump onto that Q&A with me to ask me any questions you have for that extra support and guidance. And the reason why it's self-paced is because every puppy learns at a different pace. We can't assume every puppy learns the same. It always depends on which breeder you chose, what work the breeder did, how much time you have as a family to dedicate to your puppy, and whether or not it's the first time you've had a dog. If it's your first time having a dog, it's a learning curve for you and an even bigger learning curve for your puppy, and so all of the training takes longer, and that's why a self-paced program is best, so that we only move on to the next training exercise when your puppy has actually learnt it without feeling the pressure of feeling behind. Now, throughout the program, like I said, there's also all of the video modules, and it means that the whole family can get involved. And I've had a lot of families come through the program, hundreds and hundreds now of Cavoodle families, and one thing that I get told all the time is how beneficial it is for families with children to actually be able to sit down with their children, put the program up on the TV, and then have me speak to the children in the videos, and how the children listen so much more when I'm telling them how to respond and behave to the puppy versus when the parents try and tell the children. So it was really important to me that the whole family could actually get involved and watch the training modules as well and the videos. And the good thing is, all of those videos, they were filmed by me and when I had my little Cavoodle puppy Joey. So every single day I filmed with him, and I filmed real life moments. So when Joey did bark, and when he did try and bite, and when he did cry, how do we respond to that in real time with a puppy, so that it's not a polished, perfect version with a trainer and their perfect dog, because that's not reality. Reality is puppy training is a bit messy, and puppies don't always respond straight away very well, and we need to know how to respond the right way when they do try and bite and bark and cry and chew. And so I filmed all this with Joey so that you could see this is how a puppy acts, and this is how we shape their behavior and we guide their behavior. And it's amazing. I add videos to it all the time. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is we can actually start that program and do all the learning before we actually get our Cavoodle puppies home. And that's what we have to do before actually buying a Cavoodle. So if you made it through to the end of the episode, you've listened to all my questions that you should ask yourself, you've gotten to the end of it, and you're like, okay, yep, I've got a good work schedule, I financially can afford a Cavoodle, I'm ready for the time commitment, I don't have any travel plans coming up, and if I do, I have someone to look after the puppy, the family members are all the right age. If you've gone through all these questions and you actually feel ready for your Cavoodle, the next thing is to choose your training program and hopefully join my Cavoodle Training Academy so that we can learn everything about the behavior of a Cavoodle before your puppy comes home. It's the last piece of the puzzle. It's the last thing to make you feel really prepared. And I really would love to welcome you inside. Again, you have an entire year access to the whole program. So it's never too early to join. It is specific to Cavoodles. You're going to learn obedience training. You're going to learn behavior training, and you're also going to learn grooming tutorials and how to groom your Cavoodle. So it is so much more value for money compared to your general puppy school, and I'm here to support you as your Cavoodle coach. So the link is in the show notes. I really would love to welcome you into the program. If you have any questions about whether the Cavoodle Training Academy is the right program for you and your family, please feel free to send me an email. My email is hello@oodleway.co. You can send me an email. I can let you know if it's the right fit, but I would love to welcome you inside. It's all about Cavoodles. I live and breathe Cavoodles. It's a really great community, and all of the families that are in the program would love to also welcome you inside. So hopefully I'll see you in there. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And again, if you would like me to go into more detail about how much having a Cavoodle costs each month and actually break down the cost of different things with actual figures, again, just let me know and I'm happy to film that episode for you. Okay, I believe we've reached the end of this episode. Hopefully a lot of you are ready for Cavoodles, because it is the best decision you will ever make in your life. They are the best dog. They are a family member. You will love them more than life itself. They are beautiful. They are so sweet, and I'd love for you to experience the joy and love that they bring your family. So hopefully you're ready. Hopefully you'll join the Cavoodle Training Academy. And I will see you next week for another episode of the Cavoodle Coach podcast. This has been your coach, Tiana Karamayas. I'll see you later. Bye.